Most companies around here are only technology, but bringing in this real-world aspect of food and food delivery and such this personal experience around connecting over a great meal. So with that, I'll welcome up two of our amazing guests who, funny enough, both actually spent time at Goldman Sachs during the financial crisis in the late 2000s. They both have their MBA, actually sort of from competing schools, one from Harvard, one from Stanford. They both have incredibly rich experiences, from doing branding work for the World Cup to leading huge finance and strategy teams for Instacart, a pretty big company. So with that, I'll welcome up Azella and Sagar. So I just gave a super quick intro. So I'd love for you all to start and share a little bit more about what you do, where you're at, and what a typical day looks like for you.
Okay, what we do and where I'm at. So I'm at Caviar for companies specifically now. We had a restructuring and reorg a few months ago. I'm the National Head of Operations, and so that entails overseeing our inventory hubs where our captains, everybody has a different name for their workers, couriers, shoppers, captains. They come to an inventory hub, they pick up supplies, they drive to a restaurant, they pick up the food, they drive to the client, they serve the meal. And so I'm in charge of both that team and the live operations support and scheduling of that team. So how do we get the right captains on the right meal to the right clients, and everybody wants lunch at the exact same time. So logistically, how do we bring that huge, complex organization together?
Yeah, give a little bit.
Okay, I've been a bit all over the place. I started at Goldman, same as Sagar? Sagar, like lager. Told me. And after that, I went to business school with a good friend of mine, Max, who works at SAP. He's here today, I think, somewhere. There you are. And after that, I went to a marketing agency that did brand experiential, and I did marketing strategy for them. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life and career, so I quit my job, went traveling around the world, and ended up in Africa. There I started doing bottom of the pyramid NGO consulting work, which then moved into a strategy and biz dev job at Viacom Media, doing television across Johannesburg in Kenya and Nigeria, and then I wanted to move back to the Bay. And so I figured I'd parlay my media experience into a job here, and ended up working as the chief of staff for the president at StubHub, which is my first foray into e-commerce and a two-sided marketplace. And then I realized I wanted to get more operational and get my hands dirty and start making some real decisions, and looking for an operations role, and discovered in the Bay that operations is, for lack of a better word, fluffy. You're not moving widgets and people from point A to point B. It's not logistics and supply chain operations. It's marketing ops, it's biz ops, it's customer service ops, it's sales enablement. And I wanted to find something that was like actually supply chain logistical ops. And when you start thinking about what that means in the Bay, that really means delivery. And so it's either delivering people or products or food. And so Caviar was a really great place that I could try out those operational chops. And I came and started working as the Bay Area head of operations on the Caviar regular side. And about 3 months later, realized that the startup that we had bought on the catering side needed a lot more help. And so now I run operations for the catering side, which we call Caviar for Companies.
Fantastic.
Hey everyone, I'm Sagar, as Azella said. My background is not quite as rich as hers is. I started my career at Goldman as well, doing investment banking, covering consumer and retail companies. So things like P&G, Unilever, grocery stores, which was a good experience to have then, given what I do now. I went to KKR after that, which is a large cap private equity firm, basically investing in companies, figuring out how to help them grow, how to help them become the companies that we thought they could be. Again, focused in the consumer space and the media space. Spent a little bit of time at business school and have now been at Instacart for 4 years. My role at Instacart is a little bit less defined. I run finance and strategy, but for a long time what that meant was actually a little bit simpler than that. It was, what is the company we are today? what is the company we want to be, and what do we need to do to get there. So spending time with our leadership team, our operations team, our product and engineering teams, figuring out what the right milestones to hit would be, and helping us understand how we're going to go do that. And so that came from a financial perspective. I think one of the things with operations-heavy companies, in addition to sort of the complexity of moving people around, is in a lot of Silicon Valley companies, the financial part of the business is less relevant because these are high-margin software businesses. They're businesses where product decisions don't require a deep, deep understanding of the unit economics. That's not true in companies like Uber, Lyft, Caviar, Instacart. And so a lot of the decisions we've made and continue to make require really deep knowledge of how our business works and what that means for both growth and margins. And so I've continued to spend time with the team that we've built, making sure we bring that perspective alongside a fantastic consumer offering and a fantastic offering for our retail partners. And so the team now is our team overall as a company is about 1,000 people, finance and strategy is roughly 40, and we spend time, of course, doing the core financial things, but then really focusing on how do we take the business to the next level and really be a part of some of those key decisions.
Fantastic. So you can see we have some amazing guests. You both mentioned it in sort of different ways about the challenges that are associated with this mix of technology and sort of operations, which in the Bay is fairly unique. I'd love to hear sort of about a challenge that each of you are facing in this intersection in your day-to-day, or that your teams are facing, and how you're going about solving that.
Sure. I'm sure you're going to talk about the people management side of it. So I'll talk about a different side. Delivering groceries is really hard. And every time somebody orders something, they order $100 worth of groceries. It's 20 to 25 items that they're buying. And I don't know about you guys, but when you first started ordering things online, it was likely on Amazon. And it was likely, I want to get this particular thing, right? We've ordered a bunch of stuff on Amazon recently, but pillowcases is one of them. And whenever you order things in an e-commerce offering, you get exactly what you order. I mean, that is, you get a size medium shirt from Nike. They don't really replace it with pants or a different shirt. You get the thing you order. At grocery stores, that's really different. When you go to the grocery store today, most consumers themselves are actually substituting items all the time. The strawberries you like are out of stock, you get raspberries. If the type of bread that you normally order or buy, the brand there isn't there, you get a different brand or a different type of bread. And that's obviously very true when a shopper goes, and that's our version of Courier, or Catering. When a shopper goes and shops for you, that same thing holds true, but the customer experience, customers aren't used to having things substituted. They're not used to having things replaced in an e-commerce setting. And so one of the big challenges for us has been, firstly, to get a lot better at it, to work with our retail partners to make sure things are in stock, they're there when we're shopping for them, that our shoppers are going and picking them, and making the app and the shopper experience really easy to be able to navigate that. But then at the same time, understanding that our business is different from other businesses and training the consumer in a way that's different from other e-commerce offerings. And so as I thought about, imagine you went on Facebook and it was like, hey, searching for this person isn't available today, come back tomorrow. That isn't true in any other sort of e-commerce product. And so that has been a challenge that's been pretty unique for us. And I think within grocery especially, it's been pretty unique, and we've gotten a lot of feedback along the way. I like to tell people, I think we're better than most other folks at it, and we still suck at it. There's a lot of room to go improve, and so it's an exciting challenge that we've tried to solve in both very difficult ways, but then also in some easier ways in terms of talking to the consumer a little bit more clearly and transparently. So that's been a fun learning for us in our business.
Before we jump, I do want to poke at that a little bit though. Because you have these shoppers, do you train them? Do you train them on what good produce looks like? Do you? Train is an interesting word when you have sort of a decentralized shopper fleet. What I would say is, so we have in the app, we have sort of, we do have sort of modules and things that shoppers can use in the app to make sure they have a better understanding of how things work. So a couple of examples, right? The first time that you pick produce in the app, we'll have a module that pops up that says, hey, this is the difference between a really ripe avocado, a kind of ripe avocado, and a not ripe avocado. There are things, when you go through and pick in a grocery store, we actually try to order the things that you're going to go pick in the most logical way of going through the grocery store. So, we'll bundle produce together. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky because there'll be one item of produce that actually sits in a different part of the grocery store, and we try to learn them to make sure that it's easy for a shopper to navigate the store as effortlessly as possible.
and then we suggest replacements. So, if something is out of stock, what we try to do is say, hey, what's something like, rye bread, which is something that all the time is out of stock. And this is a funny one. When I go to the grocery store, if rye bread's not there, I replace it with tortillas, which isn't intuitive to anybody in the world other than my wife who's here. And it's because I only know how to make grilled cheese or quesadillas, and so if I can't make a grilled cheese sandwich, I'm making a quesadilla. But that's not obvious to people, right? So making it easy for your shopper to know, hey, if Sagar doesn't want rye bread, he actually wants this other thing, and making that choice easy. We do that all through the app, and then obviously we have communication tools as well, but those are a couple of them.
I think that teed it up well for the people side.
Yeah.
I think, so my roles was actually split. I started out in Caviar Marketplace, which is a regular delivery service from one person to one person. And now I'm looking at Caviar for Companies, which is how do we bring catering to a company during lunchtime for anywhere from 20 to 700 people. And so on the Caviar side, I think one of the challenges is that when people get their food, it's a very emotional experience. Even if you're getting delivery from someone, you want to feel like it's been taken care of, you want it to be hot, you want it to be great, all those things. Caviar and food delivery with a third-party provider, i.e. a 1099 contract worker, who you cannot train, who you cannot teach, who you can only suggest things to and say, this is how you might think about this if you were to want to give a good avocado, means that you have people that are not, they're not focused on making sure that delivery service is great, right? Uber has at least stars. Everybody has rankings, but how well we're able to leverage those from a data perspective, we'll leave that for another day. So you have these 1099 workers who are the ones who are the face of your brand, going to people's homes and saying, here's your food. They're not incentivized to actually create hospitality and a good feeling when it comes to food, which is a very emotional service. They're incentivized to get there, drop it off, and get out and get to the next one because they're trying to make money. And so from our perspective on the Caviar Marketplace side, it's really trying to figure out how you can create a brand feeling, a sense of ownership, a sense of accountability when they're dropping that food off, because they are the face of your brand and you can't tell them what to do. You can't tell them when to pick up food. You can't tell them anything. So that's a difficult operational challenge that is food related specifically because people feel some kind of way about their food. On the Caviar for Companies side, you kind of run into the same problem. We actually went to a model because we're small enough to have our company workers, our captains, be W-2 workers. And so we can, on some level, have them trained. We can make sure that they have a sense of hospitality and all those things. But the operational complexity of picking up the serving bowls, the shapers, the sternos, the dishes for a 700-person order, getting enough bags to pack all of the hot food, the saucy food, Indian food is especially hard, to make sure that it doesn't spill all over your bags and you get there and it's not like everywhere and just orange sauce everywhere. And then to make sure that they are active and aware and serving people and making sure that you don't run out of chicken. You can't determine whether or not the restaurant's going to give you enough food. You can't determine whether or not the restaurant's going to be on time. So you actually have almost like a four-sided marketplace. Right? You have the captain, you have the inventory, you have the restaurant, and you have the client. And so trying to manage that operational complexity and get 1,000 orders done at the same time across 3 different cities in the Bay Area is incredibly difficult with captains who are using an app that's telling them, do this task, do this task, do this task. And if one thing goes off, everything goes off. And so that I think has been difficult. And again, it's the same thing, people want their food. And in the Bay, not that entitlement is the right word, but tech workers very much feel like they should have lunch when they want it and it should be set up perfectly and all those things, right? So you can't mess that up either or else people are going to be upset. So again, food makes everything a bit more intense.
Yeah, I mean, and there's interesting parallels on both sides, the 4-sided marketplace and the 3-sided marketplace. For each of you, which do you view as sort of the keystone of the most important of those pieces? Is there one, or is it truly that they're all sort of equal?
You want to go first?
So our sales team would say clients are most important, obviously, because without clients we have nothing else. I think on the Caviar side, especially on the regular marketplace, honestly, the restaurants are the most important. They are the demand driver. We've had a great partnership with Siebel for the past 4 or 5 years. We're exclusive with them. And the traffic on our site would drop dramatically if we didn't have Siebel as the brand name bringing people in. And so without the important restaurants, or the restaurants that everybody wants to eat at, we don't have a business. On the Caviar for company side, I would probably say that it is the captains because they make things go. But at the end of the day, both of these companies are under Square, and Square's mission is economic empowerment. And so Square will always say we're there for the restaurants first, because we generally at Caviar work with mom and pop restaurants, not the big national chains like Wendy's and Burger King that you'll find on like Uber Eats. We go for like the person who grew up in the city, built their own restaurant, maybe a regional chain, but you're really trying to work with the regional smaller players. And so restaurants like this, our team would say.
On our end, so we're actually a four-sided marketplace too. The fourth side for us is advertisers. So companies like P&G, Pepsi, Unilever, Coke, they advertise on the Instacart platform, and it's just a huge business for us, and it's important for customers, for retailers, for us, and for the grocery stores. And so with that said, our number one value is solve for the customer, and the customer for us is our end customer. I totally agree with some of the sentiment. You don't have the offering without shoppers doing a wonderful job and a hard job. You don't have the offering without, for us, grocery stores, they, in any given market, there's less than 10 grocery stores likely to have market share. And so grocery stores are a very important part of the foundation, but all of those people are there to solve for the customer, right? Ultimately, they want to be on the platform because that's where traffic comes. The more we grow with the customer base, the better it is for every other part of our marketplace. And so a lot of what we do, whether it's where we invest, whether it's what we're trying to solve for, some of the growth levers we're trying to pull, we keep that customer in mind, and so much so that that's sort of the top of the we try to follow.
Can I ask a question? So I'm an avid Instacart user myself.
Are we solving for you?
Yes.
Okay.
When you say the customer is kind of like the end user and the one you keep in mind, I personally, because I'm here in the Bay, when I saw Whole Foods was going off, I was like, I might have to rethink my whole Instacart subscription. So how do you kind of balance between knowing that some grocery stores, when they're that brand conscious, are drivers of demand of those consumers? And
So look, we have exclusive relationships with 200-300 grocery stores across the country. We partner with around 60% of the U.S. grocery market, which is $600 billion of sales. And so our grocery partners are incredible, right? We value their brands. We want to build things for them. One of the companies we acquired last year is a company called Yanada that does sort of e-commerce websites for grocery stores specifically. So kind of helping them build their own e-commerce platform. And so it's incredibly important for us for them to be on the platform and be growing on the platform. But what we've heard from them and what we see is important is they crave sales too, right? They want to have a business online that can compete with the Amazons of the world, with the Walmarts of the world. And so for us, so much of it is bringing them that customer base, making sure that customer base has a great experience, and retaining that customer base. And if we do that, we don't think that, I think Amazon buying Whole Foods was a little bit, was obviously a big event in this space, but we think we can help them build, defend, and grow their business in a changing world. And we've been able to do that with them pretty quickly. One maybe quick anecdote on this perspective is, when Amazon bought Whole Foods, we 6 months afterwards signed 5 of the top 7 grocery stores in the US as partners to Instacart. And one of the things we found is, because of the sort of business model we have, because of the national presence we have, we're available in 80% of the US, meaning over 100 million households can order groceries within 2 hours, and we can deliver to them. We were able to roll out a product with Kroger, for example, nationally within 3 months, and they had to put up $0 million of capital to do it. And that's just something that is very, very difficult for a lot of these stores to do on their own, without sort of the foundation, the technology, and the shopper fleet that we've spent a lot of time developing. And so, absolutely, we want them to have, we want them to stay on the platform, we want them to love being on it, but what we found is the best way to do that is to deliver the sales. And that means, having a consumer experience that lasts and grows and is innovative and continues to get better.
Azella, I'm interested in a similar question. Caviar is in a very crowded space. How do you view the competition? Do you focus on them? Do you charge forward? How do you think about it?
That's a good question. I think, as you said, it's a very crowded space. We've got DoorDash, who is spending $1 million a day on marketing right now, on out-of-home advertising. They've pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the industry in the last couple of years. And so you've got them, and you've got Postmates, and you've got Grubhub and Seamless, who are now one big, massive company. And so you've got a lot of players realizing that there's a big and growing market for food delivery. And I think it comes back to how do you want to differentiate your brand. And I think Caviar, for whether it was on purpose or whether it's just how we grew up, even the name Caviar connotes a sense of kind of elevated food, elevated experience. And so that, plus the fact that we really do partner with the mom and pop shops or the Siebels of the world, not the big national grocery chains, really means that our strategy to date has been to focus on the top 14 metro markets. We're not in middle America. We're not going after kind of like the everyman. Most of our market share is in San Francisco, New York, Chicago, big metro markets where people have a lot of disposable income and they're willing to spend $15 to $20 on an entree. When you think about what that means for your growth perspective or your growth potential, your total addressable market is only so big. There's only so many people that can afford that on a regular basis to come back over and over at that price point. And so I think right now Caviar is honestly in a state of reflection of what do we want to be when we grow up. We've been in the market we started in 2013. We were acquired by Square, I think, in 2014. And the goal was, it made sense, right? Square wants to get into small, mom and pop shops that, small business owner. Restaurants are one of the biggest small business owner categories in the country. Let's buy Caviar. They've got restaurant partnerships. We combine the two. Everybody's happy. I think we have just now integrated fully that we can connect Square and Caviar in terms of POS system for our restaurants. So that's 5 years later. And so we're still trying to decide what that means in the ecosystem of Square on a bigger, broader scale, and what that means for Caviar. Do we go after the rest of America and try and compete with DoorDash and spending $1 billion? Unclear. Does that make sense? Or do we double down? I think right now we're essentially becoming a commoditized business in a pre-consolidation era. And like any other massive industry, you've got credit cards or you've got 4 big ones. You've got telecom where there's 4 big ones, right? And so we can either try and get bigger in our scale and try and get more people, or we can try and become the Amex of food delivery. And I don't know that we necessarily have decided on that strategy yet, but it's in the works. Yeah.
You said something interesting though. You touched a little bit on how Caviar is a part of larger Square. What's it like being in sort of a small team, maybe a small renegade team within a fairly large company?
Yeah, I think Caviar has managed to retain that sense of small renegade feel. There's still quite a bit of startup, fail forward, fail fast, try some stuff, tell everybody how it didn't work so that we can learn from each other. One of the things I do love about Square as a company that I think has permeated into Caviar is this concept of radical transparency. When they first started, people took notes from meetings and they would send it out to the entire company so that everybody could see everything that happened if you wanted to. That still happens to the point where you have to filter your Gmail because it's just insane. But that ethos of sharing, collaboration, everybody weighing in, very much still alive and kicking at Caviar. And so the upside of being a small guy in a big company is that you get the brand recognition, being like, we're a Square company, people care. And ideally the upside is that you have access to more capital for investment. The downside to that is you have a parent company who's putting your growth rate and your potential against Cash App's growth rate and Cash App's potential and deciding which one it wants to invest in. And the downside, as we were talking about earlier, is just shared services. If anybody who has been in a large company and has had to deal with InfoSec, VenSec, legal, finance, HR, compensation, benefits, trying to get something done, like I want to raise our rates for our captains by $1, can drive someone crazy. So there's definitely downsides to being a larger company. There's also upsides to being a part of something that is growing rapidly and scaling. So, pros and cons.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think, like we mentioned earlier, those challenges are there for a reason, but oftentimes it's hard to see that reason in the moment. I want to dig into both of you a little bit more personally now. Like, what interested you about the companies? Why did you join? What was your sort of value system when you were joining?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So I joined Instacart about 4 years ago, and actually the way that I got introduced to the company was a little bit fortuitous and impromptu. Our CEO is a guy named Ravi Gupta, who I've worked with for 10 years, and joined Instacart a week after I did, but he was sort of interviewing for the role and accepted the role and reached out, and as I reflected sort of on the opportunity, sort of hindsight is 2020, it was so lucky that it happened at that time. The journey has been what it's been. But for me, the calculus of whether to join or not was pretty simple. There's sort of 3 or 4 things that I had in mind. One, is this a team I'm going to enjoy working with? And I think, I put that very high sort of on my list of, especially working within the startup world, which I'm glad I do because having been through sort of the last 4 years, it's such an important part. Any startup that you work in, any early stage company, really any company, but I think especially true for the younger ones who are trying to figure themselves out, a lot of the job is how you react to changes in your environment, right? There are things that, one of the things I like to say is we had one of the best meetings we've had as a leadership team the day before Amazon Wholefoods. And I remember, we were on a call and we were like, things are clicking, this is like, what a great day. And then the next day it was like, sort of big change in the ecosystem. What do we go do? And I think having that team environment that you have ultimate trust in one another and you sort of respect to the decision making, there's good debate and you set action, you're able to navigate through, I think just like an undefined ecosystem. I think that's a big part of being successful. And so that was sort of the first piece of criteria. The second one I think is pretty similar to what Azella said earlier, which is, especially as a business person, being in a tech company where operations, sort of financial perspective, are an integral part of the company being successful was really attractive to me. A lot of what we found is having that really good balance between our business operations, which is really, all former private equity kind of financial strategy type of team, with our product managers. That relationship has been so critical to us making good decisions over and over and over again, and making sure we find ourselves in a good place. And that was really attractive to me at the time. And then the third thing is, being in a consumer app that can actually solve a problem, that is, I think, an important one. We get feedback. We get a lot of feedback of all the stuff that's going wrong based on what I told you guys earlier. But every once in a while, you get the feedback from, a new parent who's like, and some of these are our close friends who are like, dude, I had no idea your product was going to help me as much as it has until I had a kid. And it's like a pretty amazing thing to sort of hear that and sort of see the impact that can have on, especially young families who are trying, to juggle full-time jobs with raising kids and trying to figure out how to have their kids eat healthy and don't have time to both go to the grocery store and cook and sort of do all the rest. And so, I thought it was a company I could relate to, a company I could get excited behind. And then those other 2 things were really special for me.
Yeah, I'm interested to poke out one thing there. You mentioned this idea of almost like embracing ambiguity or embracing this changing nature. Do you have any tips or tricks that you use?
Yeah, I haven't figured it out at all yet. Maybe one tip is to do it better than I have. One of the things, one piece of advice I got in talking to some friends who've been at startups before on my own was, they said to me, they said, one day you're going to feel like you guys are kicking ass at the top of the world. And the next day you're going to look at each other and say, how on earth is this ever going to work? And that is just the life of being in a startup. And I think one of the big sort of learnings of that has been, how do you sort of stay even-keeled through that? And how do you sort of embrace the fact that that's going to be the way things work? And if some of my colleagues were here, they would say, I haven't figured it out yet. But it's been that journey of sort of, every time something it's never as good as you think it is, it's never as bad as you think it is. And sort of being patient to see how it comes out on the other side, sort of being level-headed and say, my job is to actually figure out how to charge through this and make the outcome as good as it can be, regardless of whether the external factor is good or bad. I think that has been the best part of it. And then I think having really smart people who, we have some people who are sort of eternally optimistic, and I think you need those on your team because that's the only way you can sort of figure it out. I mean, think about some of the things that have happened in grocery delivery, right? Like, it's been crazy over the last 4 years. And so having folks who can sort of see the kernel of good and then really take advantage of that, that's been inspiring to me and something that I've learned to try to do myself.
Honestly, for me, I'm not a big tech person. I'm actually a supply chain logistics nerd, and I was trying to find something for my next role that would allow me to dive deep into that world and manage people and manage an operation and have to make decisions that were going to materially affect a business. When I started looking at roles, this just jumped out at me because I had also never been in a startup environment, really. The smallest company I had been at before then was 1,500 people and had been around for 20 years. And so coming to Caviar for me was an opportunity to try something that I'd never done before and try to figure out how to fail forward. And that's really scary for someone who has succeeded mostly in life, whether it's at school or the next job or the next brand or whatever. I wanted to like try and put myself in a position where I wouldn't know what I was doing. I would be trying to figure it out as I went along day to day. And there would have to be a moment where I would look in the mirror and be like, I have no freaking clue, and I hope nobody figures this out that I don't have a clue. Because I want that, and I'm not gonna grow without it. And so when this role came open and the potential for being able to dive into stuff that I'd never done before happened, that really was the impetus for leaning into it and getting a chance to do operations and logistics and knowing that I was going to be standing up in front of hundreds of captains and trying to inspire them when I know really all they care about is kind of just making money. Like, it was also one of the things my boss asked me in my interview was, what do you think, what's gonna be the hardest thing for you in this role? And honestly, I was like, I don't know how to relate to people necessarily who really only care about what's my next paycheck gonna look like, right? Like, you're dealing with people who are hourly workers who really just wanna like see if you can pay them more, if they can do more work and they can make more money and take it home. You're not dealing with these tech workers who want status, who want a promotion, who wanna climb, who wanna, you know, prove to everybody and themselves that they belong at Apple, Google, Facebook, da-da-da-da.
Everyone is nodding their head so rigorous for you right now. Everyone is nodding their head. That sounds pretty familiar.
Right, exactly, which is me, right? I know how to manage me. I don't know how to manage people who don't have the same, like, motivation system as I do. And so that's what I said. I was like, I'm worried that I'm not gonna relate. And in my first 3 months, I came in and I was like, oh, this needs to be fixed. We hadn't at the time ever had an accountability system. We had never tracked when captains showed up, when they called out and didn't come in. We didn't have a way to hold them accountable and not schedule them the next week because we can't trust you and rely on you. We were paying people. We had captains send in their availabilities every week, changes every week. Then we scheduled them in for the next week ahead. Captains were waiting until Friday, which made things really hard to finish a schedule and send it to all the captains because somebody had come up with a bright idea that if we pay them $50 as a bonus on Friday, if we don't have enough, then we'll get more people, which just makes people wait until Friday to put in their availabilities, right? And so I was like, we're cutting that out. That doesn't make any operational sense. And we're instituting a points system. You show up late, it's a point. You don't show up at all, it's 5 points. You have a big problem with the client, it's 3 points, right? We're gonna do this like the DMV, right? If you make enough points, you're out the door. You get this many points, you're in the red zone, you're in the green zone, everybody's happy. We'll put some reward system on the other side. You stay in the green zone long enough, you get bonuses, right? So in my mind, from a new manager perspective who don't understand people, this made a lot of sense. I was like, we're gonna penalize people who are not showing up and being unreliable. We're gonna reward people that are. Everybody will be happy. And literally, our hub managers, and then I instituted this over a course of like 2 weeks because I'm moving fast, I'm making things happen, I'm an operational guru, I know how to motivate people. And if it were me and somebody said, here's a point system, my reaction would be like, I'm gonna be in the green every week. I'm gonna be the best green person out of everybody and I'm gonna show you that I'm like the best in the green zone ever. Their reaction was, this is punitive, I feel like I'm being micromanaged, I feel like somebody's big brother's watching me, how am I supposed to do my job, I really care about my client, sometimes I'm gonna be late because I'm doing something for my client, why am I getting points for this? It blew up in my face. Now, we still have the point system, and eventually people got used to it, but trying to bring something that new and that kind of like, we're watching you accountability to a group of people who aren't incentivized and motivated by an internal sense of, I just want to show everybody that I can be at the top of the ranking board, was just like a fundamental mistake. And so I had to eat my crow and like go back to my boss and be like, so, that thing that I told you that I was worried about when I started, that maybe kind of happened already. To his credit, he was like, great, good job. You tried something, you failed. You're aware now, you're not gonna do it again. Next time, when you institute something, you're gonna go talk to captains. You're gonna see whether or not this would actually motivate them. You're going to talk to the hub managers. You're going to socialize it all the way down. You're gonna make people feel like they've been heard. So now I know. But that's exactly what I went there for, right? To learn, to fail, to try some stuff and see if it worked, and try some stuff and not have it work.
Yeah.
So.
Sagar, I'm interested. What's a recent memorable failure that you learned from?
There's a lot to choose from. There's a lot to choose from. So I think on the sort of change management side of what Azella just said, we've had a lot, and I think every company in our space has had a lot of these interactions with, especially the shopper, driver, courier side, captain side. And I think we've had a lot of the same learnings on that dimension where we genuinely have tried to do things in a way that's beneficial and helpful. It just kind of gets lost because you don't actually understand the underlying foundations and motivations. So we have, I think, dozens of stories on that dimension. And it's funny, like we've learned from them and tried to change, but it's also hard in a business that needs to be dynamic. It's hard because you're trying to manage, hundreds of thousands of folks who are all over the country. So that resonates very, very strongly with me. From like a personal perspective, all sorts of stuff. I mean, from the financial perspective, part of the craft in a startup is, people say that sort of founders are offensive coordinators, and a lot of financial folks, CFOs, want to be defensive coordinators, meaning like, slow down, we're spending too much, or this doesn't make sense, or let's be more conservative. And that doesn't work, right? Because you want to be on the same side of the table, you want to actually be achieving the same thing and figuring out when it is you want to actually stand in front of something versus when there's risk, that's good risk to have. And so I personally have had a lot of learnings on that of being ineffective because I didn't actually be patient around, is this actually a bad thing? Is it worth us trying some of it? Is it okay with us taking on some financial risk on one topic? So that on another topic, if it's actually the wrong decision, and really like in my heart, we know it, that you have a lot more effectiveness in the organization saying, hey, like we want to be aggressive on things, but here's the reason why this one doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I have a couple of examples of that of where, luckily we have a great sort of relationship as a leadership team, but where I found we ended up doing something that I sort of was like, this doesn't make sense, and then in the end it actually made a lot of sense. And I should have just been patient through that process and sort of really played out what we're solving for. And that would have been, created some more sort of credibility or a little bit more effectiveness when there's other things that you actually want to stop. And so from just a leadership team management standpoint, that's been really eye-opening.
So before I ask the next question, I'll mention that this is the last question that I'm going to ask, and then it's your opportunity. So be thinking of your questions. But in this vein of sort of psychological safety, emotional safety, both of you lead fairly large teams. What are some things that you all do on your teams to make your team feel safe, taking risks, failing, speaking up when they may be wrong?
Honestly, this is what I'm spending my days right now trying to figure out and think about. I don't have an answer for that yet. When we acquired Zesty, it's taken me a few weeks and months to figure out that there was a very strong, when you're a startup and you're trying to prove to the world that you can make this work, every client lost is like death, right? Like every time you can't get something done or you lose something, everybody feels it. And I think Zesty went through a lot of, fits and starts, had a lot of rounds of layoffs, getting them ready for acquisition. And so there is a relative amount of PTSD from that experience with the people there. And back in the day, which I just discovered last Thursday in our team meeting, when they would lose a client, people would start pointing fingers and be like, oh, it was account management, or you didn't put in this thing, or the logistics team didn't schedule it right, or whatever. And that has carried over after they got acquired into the account side, the revenue side, as well as the operations side. And one of the things that I've been struggling with is like, why can't we just all get along? Like, why can't we have a culture of, I trust you, I know you were trying to do your job right. If it didn't work, it must have been an outlier as opposed to you just don't know what you're doing. And I finally realized it's because there was this culture of, oh my God, what if we lose a client? It can't be me. And so our hub manager in San Francisco, which is our biggest hub, is now like getting in there, and he's like, every day I trip over something that's been swept under the rug. and I uncover it and I ask people what it is. And like, oh, it was that one time that I did that thing and I didn't tell anybody about it, but it worked out in the end, so it's fine. And he's like, but that broke an entire process. Like, why aren't we talking about this? And so there is this fear of blame. There is this fear of, oh my God, we might lose a client. And I think that is part of the difficulty in transitioning from a startup to an adolescent phase within a larger company, is that we have already they've proven to the world they are a going concern. Now the goal is to scale.